Yo, Tyler, what's going on,
It's
dude?
hot.
It's hot.
It's very hot. Did I tell you my air conditioning's broken?
Oh, no.
Well, it's like currently getting replaced.
Yeesh.
So, I mean, I dragged my feet. It's the life of a contractor. It went out last summer, and I was like, I'm not dealing with this right now. Wanted it to be a quick fix, and I decided to not just fix the issue, but replace everything and drag my feet and getting all of that put in order until just recently. So I was hoping to beat the weather. I didn't quite make it.
So we have window ACs right now.
Oh, I've done it.
So, yeah. I mean, nothing wrong with them, but we went from our fully renovated home and we bought this place. And it's like, I'm trying to be patient. It's like I hired an architect. We're like going through the process, spending a lot of money on design because we want to do it really, really well. And then I'm like dragging window ACs, and my hand got cut last night.
There's nothing worse.
I'm like, why am I even bothering? I should just put a regular air conditioning and just put ductwork I'm like, slow down. And meanwhile, you know, our little log cabin we have has amazing air conditioning. Yeah. It's got like 2 mini split heads in it. I'm like, we should just stay up here.
Yeah.
We should just stay in this thing.
Especially to get up on the 3rd floor. The city starts retaining that nice warm heat on all the buildings. It's going to be hot boy summer.
Yeah, after a long weekend with all the windows closed and you get home and it's like at 9 p.m. you're trying to put the kids to get to bed and you're dripping sweat on them. Yeah.
We used to hang up like sheets when we rented Rachel and I after college, and there was like there was no door separating the first. Well, we were on the 2nd and 3rd, so the 2nd and 3rd floor, but there was a stairwell. We used to hang up sheets and like blankets in the stairwell just so that we weren't dying up on essentially what was converted attic where our bedroom was. It's like, this is terrible. That's the one thing I can't live without is air conditioning. I was like, I'll sleep in my truck tonight.
I also every time, I also told myself that I'd get the window ACs in before.
Oh, yeah.
Hot. So, like, you would never have to, like, counteract. You just be prepared.
No, you got to be sweating it out while you're doing it and, like, cursing and banging stuff, and then the one doesn't work. When's this thing going to get cold? Get the nice condensation drip on the outside of the building.
Tyler, I'm putting the unit in the front window. So we're in a brownstone, and my kid's room is up on the 3rd floor. And I'm putting the window unit in, and the little wings that you spread out to block the hole
that are ripped and dry rot.
No, they're totally fine. But I'm like, I need my drill so I can screw this in. So I go downstairs, I get the drill, and I screw it in. And out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, I like get spooked by something outside, like the other window, and I'm like, holy shit! There's a skunk up on the gutter. and I go over. It's my cat.
It went out the window.
She went out the window in the time I went down to get the drill. I'm like,
the cat you just lost.
The cat for the 2nd time.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So now we have one of those Apple AirTags. Yeah. And it's strapped to her collar, so we can just. I was like, how accurate is it? And Meg had it on her phone, and she's like, it says currently 8 feet away. And I look on the floor. I'm like, yep, that's 8 feet.
Oh, man, that's amazing.
All right. Well, this week we have Brenda Izen, an architect up in Canada. She leads an all-female architecture firm with a focus on modern architecture. We dig into it all.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. I mention it in the podcast, but I'm like 110% behind what she's doing, empowering women, the community, helping the community. There's a lot of stuff we didn't dig into, which was, what was the name of that? I don't even know how to say it.
Kihila?
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm dropping the ball there. But, helping to provide some more affordable housing for people in the community, the Jewish community specifically. I think, just like anything else right now, there's a lot of issues with affordable housing, and the market is so crazy, and it's basically like people are having to travel further kind of outside of their home base to try and find affordable housing. So looking to combat that. Obviously, an all-female team. Some organizations that she's involved with to kind of help progress that entire side of the industry. So I just, having two daughters, my wife being a professional, I have a ton of respect for that and value what she's doing immensely. So I don't want to, not put a lot of emphasis on that. Aside from her professional career, her projects are unreal. Go on her website. The brand, the cohesion of her brand, everything that she's done is top notch. And, the fact that she's done that with 3 kids is pretty insane.
And we do ask the question, what if a guy applies to her firm? What does she say? And we dig into that conversation a little bit, but it is important. I think that in general, we have a hard time, getting more women into this industry, and there's not a real clear way to go about it in the right manner, as we'll kind of discuss today.
Even just talking about it, there's an elephant in the room, and it's
right,
the conversation where you don't want to step on toes. You kind of want to, nod, tip of the hat to it, but at the same time it's like, well, would they rather I just not say anything and just act like they're one of the crowd? And she kind of alludes to there's no right or wrong, and kind of reassured us that just making progress is the right step to take. So it's a good conversation. I'm glad we kind of dug into that, because it's a tough thing to talk about.
At the end of the day, I think if you have the right intention, you go with it.
Yeah.
So, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like there's so much that we want to talk about. I think Tyler and I both deep dove into your brand and a lot of the things that you stand for. But before we get into it, quick introduction, who you are, what you do.
Okay, so I'm Brenda Izen. I'm a residential architect in Toronto, Canada. I run Izen Architecture, which is a practice of modern single-family homes primarily. My team is 9 people, including myself, and we offer a whole range of services on our projects, always architecture, but depending on the project, that will also include interior design, project management, landscape design. Our approach is a very holistic one, which is why we like to incorporate as much of the design elements as we can, because as we're designing, it's an experiential process for us, and the end result is reflected, very early on in our process. We build, really good relationships with our clients, with our builders, with our trades, with everyone really involved in the project. And so we're very relationship focused and also super detail oriented. We design everything as much as we can in a project down to the very smallest scale, like, custom door levers and millwork pulls and air diffusers, whatever fits with the detailing of the project, always trying to minimize the visual impact of the functional elements, I guess.
And when you say full range of architectural services, you start talking about project management and landscape and interior design, how are you determining what each project gets, and and furthermore, how are you switching from, home architecture to landscape architecture?
So we imagine everything at once when we're designing a project. So with our process, we'll start with a potential client, and we have a series of meetings that we have before they even become our client. And in those meetings, we'll talk a lot about how they use their existing living space, how they plan to use their proposed living space that we're designing for them. And that's really specific personal stuff, like, if they eat dinner on the couch, or if they watch TV in bed, if the kids come into their room in the morning and spend a lot of time in the room. And all of those little details help us understand how the natural light should work in the spaces, the proportions and the flow, and, it informs every part of the design that we do. When I do a fee proposal, we break out those services. So we have architecture as a separate sort of bucket from interiors or landscape or project management. And then as we develop the project and we're, having constant touch points with our clients and presentations, and when we're presenting the floor plans, which is one of the earliest presentations, we're talking about the experience of, coming into a hallway that then opens up into this double height space, and the way that the glass works with the space and the feeling of the room. And sometimes the feeling is also the materials that we're using. And that kind of leads inevitably into the interior design, or the experience of using the outdoor kitchen or the pool, and how that leads to the house. So it all kind of happens schematically at the very same time. The one experience and the one, holistic building that includes all of those elements. And then I think as we get to more design development, often it's just a conversation about, which portions they want us to continue on with in detail, which can be all of it. And sometimes, for whatever reason, it makes sense to bring on another partner, like a landscape architect, depending on what we're working with.
Did you develop kind of your business model and formulate and construct the team out of necessity, as in these things were coming up as your designs progressed and you realized, I'd rather this in-house or be able to control this as well? Because there's a lot of specialization there. And, I'm at some point, it's like, if you're one person, you obviously can't handle all that. And a lot of people would rather just be like, hey, I'm going to hand this off to somebody else, or I know this good landscape designer. I guess my question would be kind of how that all came together in developing this, 9-person team to handle all of these different specialties.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I have a background. I spent 6 years working in a design build. And so I've spent a considerable greater amount of time on site than a lot of architects. And how I draw things and how I detail things, and also the way I intend for the end experience to be, kind of factors in, so many of the different parts of the process. And I started probably like everyone else with, a basement renovation. Let's remove this structural wall in between the kitchen and the dining room. And when I started doing, my first couple of new builds, I think it was me and one other person, or maybe me and 2 other people. And the scale was it was huge compared to what we were doing previously. So we would just do the architecture. We would either recommend a separate interior design firm, or the clients would find their own interior design firm. And I was always so disappointed at the end of the project if that was the structure. Like, I would be designing it and in my head would have this whole vision for the house, and then I would feel like so much of it was like muted or covered up in a way, even though I tried to communicate what I thought was architecturally important and should be featured throughout the process. And then with subsequent clients, when we had the finished photos, my presentation would kind of be like, okay, ignore everything that you see in this picture, but look at the way the skylight interacts with these stairs, or like ignore every single color, but look at how everything's flush. And that's not a good way to communicate to the clients. And I realized I was saying that so much that I had to start doing some of those things in-house.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because one of the notes that I kind of made was how cohesive your brand is and the projects appear. And I would say that it's probably reflecting the fact that you are able to control those many aspects of design to make that project, where it's like an entire project looks good from top to bottom, and you can tell that like there were designs and ideas that mesh throughout that entire process, rather than like, hey, we brought this person into this place, they handled the exterior and we did all the interior, where it's like now you have 2 different visions for that single project.
Exactly. To me, it's one house, it's one building. I think outside of North America, it's always the architect that designs the outside and the inside, and those things are linked in places like windows and doors and landscape. And I think a unique thing that somebody would want a totally different design for the outside and inside. And even sometimes potential clients call me and they'll say, oh, I know you specialize in modern and we really want a modern interior, but we want the exterior to like flow with the neighborhood and be more traditional. And that's even something that's difficult for us to bridge.
I feel like that would be very difficult.
This podcast is brought to you by Duration Molding and Millwork. I've talked about it for a while now, and we are going to be working with Duration on our Needham project with Steve Teak. Been chatting with the team over at Duration about custom brackets. Keith let us know how they fabricate those. I didn't even know that they actually have a steel bracket inside that he's custom making as well.
Yeah.
Because some of these things are massive. Teak has designed some huge brackets on this house. But just helping us understand the process in which to get this molding fabricated, and just helping us through the whole design process and ordering process. We've also used them for lap siding, which, I think they're most known for. But didn't he just recently tell us that he has gotten the largest order?
Yeah. It was like, not like wholesale type order.
Yeah, I totally just put you on the spot there.
Well, I was actually looking up some of their stuff right now. Like distributor type order.
It's just crazy. Like he is, they have figured out that this market is in need for good supplier or good fabrication and suppliers, and he is consistently putting out custom product in a really short time frame.
Yeah, I was trying to find a picture on their Instagram. I know I saw it at the show where they were creating top and bottom rails for decorative porches, like traditional architecture in the old towns where they had like the top rail and the lower rail. And one of the concerns would be obviously the durability. Oh, here it is. On May 10th, they're showing a structural rail, and they basically put aluminum or steel inside the top of the balustrade to get that strength there where you wouldn't necessarily have that just with the polyash product. So if you're trying to look up a photo of that, go to their Instagram, Duration Molding and Millwork, and on May 10th, 2021. There may be one sooner, but I'm trying to look at this while we're doing the podcast. That's the soonest one that I found.
Yeah, and if you guys want more information, head over to their website, durationmillwork.com. This podcast is brought to you by Reno Run. In Montreal, Toronto, Boston, Chicago, Philly, and Washington, D.C., building materials exactly when you need them. Everything from oversized orders down to small orders. I was actually on our site the other day, and Mike, our site super for one of our projects, he's got the framers buzzing through the first floor deck, and all of a sudden I turn around and Reno Run showed up, and I was like, what's this for? And they had needed a small order, and Reno Run was there in just a couple hours to get that material. Mike didn't have to leave site. He was working along the framers, getting that first floor deck installed correctly. I mean, just the fact that he was able to order right off his phone and that stuff show up and him not be distracted is huge.
We should have asked Brenda if she had seen any Reno Run vans.
Oh,
we don't have a lot of Canadian guests.
We don't. But, I mean, the amount of vans I see, it's crazy.
She had to have.
We should have asked. If you guys want to try out Reno Run and you want free delivery on us, head over to podcast.renorun.com/Modern Craftsman. This podcast is brought to you by Rockwool, high-performance, fire-resistant, soundproof stone wool insulation for your interior and your exterior walls, not only helping you achieve local codes and building standards, but getting ahead of future codes. And I've talked about it before, but the R-Class program, if you guys aren't familiar with it, you're going to head over to their website. But my R-Class package just showed up today in the mail with a bunch of goodies. They gave you some of the installation knives, a bunch of samples, a flannel shirt, a hat, a Yeti, a bunch of safety glasses, gloves, everything that you need. Wow.
I really think that Nick could just tell that I was about to say something and immediately stopped. Nobody could see that on the podcast. But I would as you're saying all this stuff that I'm sending you, I'm just envisioning you wearing all of this for the next podcast.
I should. Just
It's a
make
good
that
idea.
The clip. Well, if you guys want to learn more about the R Class program, it's a premium partnership program for builders who demand more. But it really is about networking and making sure that you are building to a really high standard. Head over to rockwool.com/rclass. This podcast is brought to you by Upstate Merch, quality-focused screen printing, embroidery, and graphic design shop located in Whitney Point, New York. You guys, you know who they are. They make all of our swag for the Modern Craftsman. They make our company T-shirts. If you guys are looking for giveaway shirts or embroidered hats, safety wear, polos, hoodies, or you're just looking for top-quality garments to outfit your team, Upstate Merch has it covered. Some of their favorite brands to print on: Bella Canvas, Next Level, Carhartt, Richardson, Bayside, many more.
Yeah, I got some stuff made actually for my Enduro club not that long ago. And I guess it's a reminder to everyone that they're dealing, as in Upstate, is dealing with a lot of the same supply chain issues that we're dealing with as far as shirts, quantities, colors. So if you're looking to get something done, definitely reach out before last minute. They turn stuff around very quickly, but just make sure that you can get the shirts, the apparel that you want, but be patient. Just like everyone else, they're kind of dealing with what we are dealing with and doing their best as a company to keep things moving forward. So don't wait till last minute. Get your orders out sooner than you need them. They're a good local company to us, and they'll ship anything right to your front door.
Yeah, and Dylan's great to work with. If you want to reach out to him, print@upstatemerch.com. Mention the Modern Craftsman podcast, and you'll get 10% off your first order.
Going back to the education part and how it's something that I think is taught outside of North America as well. And my team comes from everywhere. And so even though we do have, specific interior design professionals, also a lot of my team is educated in interior and exterior architecture as one sort of school of education.
Were you in school before working for the design build firm?
Yes. So I worked there after I did my master's. It was my second job out of school.
I want to talk about school because looking at what you do now and what you've learned and experienced, how important of a role do you think school played for you?
That's a big question. Let's not even be like, where'd you go to undergrad? Where was your master?
No.
Let's just ask, was school worth it?
I mean, if you're looking at it as a direct transactional experience, did I get the education that I need to perform my today's day-to-day job from school? Probably not. But a lot of the ways that we approach our projects, some of how we think, the iterative and reiterative design process, that all comes from school. But the percentage of that I do in my day-to-day is very little. Like the business, the zoning, the construction side, the building science. Like there was one building science course, and it was basically like it was basic building science, like building wrap, insulation and studs, just to get a proper wall assembly. So I think school is very important in architecture, and I think there's I'm probably not doing the education system justice.
Well, I think what you just said, like the iterative process to how you design, I think that's something I kind of skipped over in my mind when I was thinking about how important school is. Like for me, I'm certainly glad I went to college. I don't regret going, but I don't think it did me a lot of good for what I ended up doing in the construction industry. I think it gave me the opportunity to have experiences that then led me to being able to do what I want to do. But the actual schooling itself, I just don't think really did what I had hoped it would do. But as I spend more time with architects and really appreciate design, and frankly, like most of my free time is spent studying architecture and just appreciating architecture. I realized that it's really it's like theory of light and the use of light and the use of materials, and there's just so much more to it. That I had a conversation with a client a couple weeks ago, and he point blank asked me, should I hire the kid that's young, that just started his firm, that's probably going to be super creative, and they don't have all these, they're not going to pull another design out of like the second drawer and be like, all right, we'll just repurpose this one? Or should I work with the guy that is older and has the experience and has had the opportunity to mess up, or has had the opportunity to experience things that have went on to be really, really great, that it has then, given them the opportunity to not necessarily repurpose a detail, but realize that a particular detail can add a lot of value to it. And I started thinking about, I answered that really quickly, and I said, oh, definitely the young guy. And then I was traveling, and I thought about that the whole ride back, and I was like, there is something to be said about someone that has been in architecture for a long time, or any trade or any industry for a long time, that just because they're older and they've or I don't even want to use age, that's probably inappropriate, but it's more about being in the industry for a longer period of time, where that person doesn't necessarily have the mindset of repurposing design, but they very much could have the opportunity to be more creative because they've had more experiences. Because for me as a builder, when we try a new detail, or as a mill workshop, when we try a new detail, the only reason we've tried that detail is because we've tried other ones that have failed, or we have tried other ones that have been really great, and we're just consistently reimagining it and trying to get better. So that's why I asked about school, where it's like, is school setting up the, I think what you said, the processes in order for you to, how to go about design? Because I think for myself, I don't think I could be an architect, because I don't know, my brain is all over the place. I wouldn't know where to start. If someone said, here's my house, how would you improve upon it? 100%. But if they said, here's a blank piece of paper, I want you to draw your dream house, I couldn't do it at all.
I think that school is really good for understanding, scale and proportions, learning the technical programs, and definitely some of the relationships that I created in school, jobs that I had through professors that I worked for or researched with, or doors that opened for me later. But I think the creativity that you come out of school with doesn't apply to the real world in some ways, and it's experience that allows you to bring back the creativity. Like, if somebody just showed me a lot, and coming out of school I would put the most creative house I could think of on that lot, when you apply the zoning bylaws, all of the creative elements have to go. Or when you apply budget, all of the creative elements have to go. And I think taking the time to understand, or building code, taking the time to understand how those things work and where you have to start from, and what things are realistic and what things will always be eliminated, allows you to be creative in a realistic way.
So you went to undergrad, I assume something with design or architecture? Was it architecture?
Architecture, yeah.
And then you went to Cornell for your master's. What was that master's program? Was it more of a traditional architecture? Was it more commercial?
Yeah, it was. So there was a big focus on research. It was a very research-based architecture, a focus on rigor, taking data and turning that data into diagrams, and then turning those diagrams into architecture. And the architecture wasn't always a building. It could be a installation or an intervention in the landscape, or some sort of like social solution. So it was a very broad academic sort of definition of architecture. It's an incredible program. We also did, studios in different cities. So considering totally different subsets of, economics and climate and all different inputs from something we would deal with now. So just a very broad and well-rounded sort of education, but very different from what I do now.
Yeah, so I guess I was thinking in my head, obviously, Cornell's an amazing school. I look at what you do now, and then I think of Ithaca, and it like, I can't find the direct correlation there. Obviously, it's a great school and program. Like, I'm sure you looked at other programs as well. Why did you end up going with Cornell? To me, from the outside, I'm sure there's a million reasons, but it just seems so far from what you do. You had to have had like a reason for going there.
I think that critical thinking for me, it was something that was honed when I was in school. And so during the application process, I wasn't as aware of how many different ways I could go after school.
Sure.
All of the different niches in architecture and how I could, find my own path within that and carve my own way within that. And so I knew that I wanted to go to, a big school with a good reputation, and I didn't want a school that was too technical or a school that was too historic, focus on historical architecture. And so it was more of a process of elimination to get to Cornell, which was what I hoped it would be. And, there's so many different amazing professors that come from all over to teach there, and all the studios are really different scales. Like, we did a very small house as one of our studios, and then also like a telecommunications building in Mexico City as one of our studios. So there was a very big range, but it was in school, partially being in school and partially going through these critical thinking courses and trying to define, what architecture is, what architecture isn't, that kind of led me to eventually come here.
Yeah. And then I had noticed on your website, well, first off, you have a team of 9, which is all women. I have 2 daughters. My wife is a professional, so that's amazing for me to hear. Like, I love empowering women. I love seeing all of you girls kick ass. So that's super cool. Looking at your team and kind of how you're building this team, and it says that you offer some internships, some mentorship programs. Is that through a college, or are you, when you're looking for employees or looking for these potential opportunities, are you requiring a college degree? Are you bringing in young women who are in high school earlier? What's that look like? Is it a formal process? Or are you kind of just looking for people who are interested, maybe to get their feet wet and give you a hand?
Yeah, it's not a formal process. I'm fortunate that we're small enough that it's not very corporate at all. And I can still do a lot of things based on my gut feeling. And so a lot of it has to do with fit. I do mentorship through the OAA, which is our governing, Ontario Association of Architects. And so all architectural graduates that are going through the process of becoming licensed need to have a licensed architect as their mentor. And so I'm involved with that program, and I have mentees that I meet with regularly and sort of advise them on their career trajectory and decisions that they're making within their current jobs or changing jobs. We've had summer students, but everyone is a student. Like, I haven't had somebody in high school.
Yeah.
I'm happy to teach and I'm happy to mentor, but if I'm paying them, which we always do, they need to also be bringing a skill set where they can contribute to what we're doing. So I find it really difficult. We've had a couple people that this was their first ever job, and they don't know about email etiquette and how to talk to clients and how to talk to builders, and that's a lot of teaching required. So what we've kind of come to do as close to officially as we can is our preferred method is doing a 1-year internship, typically with a recent grad. So it's their first full-time job that's not just a summer job, but they have some work experience and they have some education.
So then you're bringing them on kind of as an internship as far as like this is a trial period? Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, it's a 1-year internship where, often they've gone back to grad school after then or gone to a different size firm. So it's sort of no strings attached for both of us. But I think if the fit is there, then it turns into something more.
Yeah. Sorry, Nick, what were you going to say?
No, that's exactly what I was going to ask. Is it more of a trial?
Yeah, I think like a 4-month summer internship is not enough. Like in our world and what we do, like I think you really only get up to speed after 4 to 6 months. So it's not fair to a summer student or to us to have somebody for a shorter period of time. And in a year, they have the 6-month period, then they understand the industry, they understand the projects, and it's beneficial to both of us.
Yeah, that's something that we're working on now, not from an internship, but just understanding like we want to make a hire. And for, a carpenter, we're typically, or someone that's hands-on, we can typically figure out within 30 days, like where their skill set is. But for like a PM or someone that's going to be managing jobs, it's really hard to get someone up to speed in 30 days. They're lucky if they understand how to run the software that we're running in 30 days. So internally, that's what we've been saying is like, all right, let's do a 3-month trial and basically figure out like, here's 3 months and we'll sit down at 3 months and, and it's the same thing. It's not formal. It's just something written down so we can kind of follow that procedure and understand like, all right, at 3 months, where do we, let's talk as a group and figure out if, we're on the right path or not.
Right, because sometimes people can also learn, they can learn and improve after a certain period of time, but there's the time period during which they're trying to understand the project and just trying to figure out,
Right.
what's happening, what's the flow of work, and then also how you work as a company and how you want things done and how you want your clients spoken to and all of those kinds of things. So for me, it's really 4 to 6 months to sort of figure that out. And so that's why we ended up with the longer internship.
And is the internship going to be, I guess I'm thinking of it's a little different than our internships here, which primarily are through schooling. Like you said, it's a, if you have, I went to Drexel, so it was quarters. So you'd have 3 months or 6 months of school, then 6 months of internship. But it was always during schooling. Is the part of the purpose of the internship with you, is that like, okay, we can come out, it's a lower pay rate, we're not committing to like a higher salary for these people, to kind of ease into what, teaching them, and it's not quite as much of a risk for you and your firm?
It's a proper salary. I think in Toronto anyways, there's more jobs than there are people, so it's competitive the other way. So no, we haven't really viewed it like that. It's something that we try to have be mutually beneficial, and we want to find the right person, and ultimately, like, I want them to succeed here, and the hope is that they will be here longer term.
Yeah, that actually sounds amazing, because the internships that I did, I feel like there was a reason for the companies doing them with the college, and you did meet some people and you networked, but it never seemed as though like the learning was limited. And I feel like they never really gave you any sort of leash, and it was very structured. The interview process was very structured and regimented, and it kind of turned me off to the internship program, because it just seemed too formalized. Like there wasn't an opportunity to kind of break out from what they set in place for you. Mm-hmm. And for somebody,
I could see that.
Somebody who's driven or wants more or wants some freedom or wants opportunity, that's really difficult when it's like, nope, this is all you're allowed to do with the program, and we're going to do this, and on these days you're going to have this to do, where I think it kind of limits a lot of people who want a little bit more.
I think ours ends up being the opposite sometimes, because we're so busy. So it's like, it's not a please go make the coffee internship. It's like, yeah, I'm going to throw you into the deep end and hope you know how to swim, because I have 3 meetings at the same time and you can take one of them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, everyone needs someone to make coffee, but I feel like our industry just is too fast paced for that. It's the same thing on our end where, again, it's not so much about having a structure to follow, like a regimen, or like a schedule, but it's just like, hey, this is our goal. Like, you come in, these are the things that we want to bring you up to speed on. But the reality is, it's like, we're going to outline that. The moment you show that you can swim, we're pushing you in the water.
Right.
And it's like, all right, now it's, you're in it. Let's see how you react to it. Because frankly, a lot of it, I don't want to use the word stress, but there's a lot of pressure in our industry to deliver, on both design, architecture, and actually building. So it's like, how does someone react to that pressure? And that, and that's really important to understand, because, we all want to be in a job or in our day-to-day where we're really, happy and go, and super cash and be able to get our work done. But there's times where the pressure has to be put on. And that's what makes, if someone's going to break in that pressure, what does that look like for the company and them as in their role for that company?
Yeah. Or not even just break, but how are you going to deal with this kind of situation and break it down into like actionable items,
right?
And be a productive contributing member of this team.
I think, it's the same thing when someone comes to you with a problem and it's like, well, what's your solution to it? It's like, well, I don't have one. It's like, then don't bring that to me yet. Like, this is your job, is to work through these problems. Right. I want to, email etiquette, I kind of laughed at, because it's something that I struggle. I feel as though I'm pretty good with email. Like, I can write an email really quick, and then I go through and I make sure that I take out the fluff and I take out the BS and just get to the point. And usually I feel like I can word it in a way that I know how they're going to reply. But I've definitely been in like a CC'd email from not so much my team now, but like old employees. And I'm like, man, that is not how we communicate. So what do you have, like, that's obviously been your experience, because you wouldn't have brought it up. Is there a structure in place? Like, how are you teaching what email etiquette looks like?
Wow, how am I teaching? I think we have, like, I don't have an employee manual or, official forms for that, but we talk about our emails a lot out loud in the office. Our office is open concept. It's not huge. It's 1,000 square feet. We sit side by side. We had to have like plexi dividers during the pandemic because we were less than 6 feet apart. We talk a lot before the email send. Like, I'll read my emails out loud sometimes. The team will also, or, after a client responds a certain way, we can talk about that as like a learning opportunity, because seeing how the email was sent, I could have predicted that they would respond like that.
Yeah.
I also I'm very, very particular about how we start emails, how we end emails. Like, there always needs to be an action item at the end, and it's always a clear next step. Like, I'm going to issue the drawings by the end of this week, or I'll call you Monday and I'll let you know what the examiner says, or whatever it is. Like, I never, ever, I think it's such a big failure when a client sends us an email that's like, hey guys, what's the next step? Or just checking in. Like, if they can read email and they can go back to our last correspondence, they should know exactly what's happening and exactly what the plan is for the coming days or weeks and when they're going to hear from us next.
I'm with you. I think, even the simple emails like, hey, we should plan a meeting together. And it's like, I would never send that. It's, hey, we should plan a meeting together. Here's my availability for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's, the back and forth. It's just that. And I think also when there's like 20 action items where it's like, okay, and because I read every single email I get. Like, every single email comes in my inbox. If I don't get them through them during the day, I'm doing them at night, just to make sure I know what my team, like what's going on in my team, if they need my assistance or anything. But oftentimes it's like, when I get an email and it's like there's 20 things I need to reply to it, I might start to reply and then be like, no, I can't. I don't have the time for this. And then it's sidebarred. And most of a lot of times I don't come back to it. And it's like, well, then our clients are going to be doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, it is. I think email etiquette is something that people don't give enough credit for, because if you're good at it, and if we want to talk about like the sales side of it, if you're good at communicating and you're good with email etiquette, you can typically get that person or maybe persuade that person to give you the answer that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, if I, even, sorry, real quick, like even just like trying to plan that meeting where it's like, if I left it up to my client, they'd come back to me and I would then be trying to find a time that they gave me. Instead, I'm being forward and saying, these are my availability. This is my availability. And then they're finding a time that works with that.
Right. Never make the recipient of your email do extra work. Like if you're, if you're referencing a drawing, even if you sent it 3 emails ago, it needs to be attached to this email if you're referencing it. If you're booking a meeting, like exactly as you said, your availability should be there. I always we talk about it all the time in the office. I don't think it's like a taught skill. And it's something that it's important to me that as a team, we communicate, like our communication is consistent and the clients are getting the same types of emails from all of us. And that they know what to expect. They're easy to read. They're not being tasked with, big assignments or like you said, like, massive things to respond to. If there's more than 5 things they need to answer, it should be a meeting, right? Like,
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. We used to have, a long time ago before email etiquette, before that specific point was part of our email etiquette, when we started doing our RCPs, we would have this whole list of questions like, about the alarm and about automation and keypads and thermostats and whatever. And it's just so much more productive in a meeting. And often they don't know the answers to any of those questions. So also if you're leading a meeting, you can give suggestions and it can be resolved the way that makes the most sense instead of trying to input things that they just guessed on.
You've only been in business since 2016?
2015.
2015. So 7 years. I feel like you've developed a lot at this point, even looking at, your website and your volume of work and the fact that you have 9 people right now. That's impressive. Like Nick, I think she's got you beat.
She might.
It's got to be pretty close.
That's high praise. Thank you.
Well, I mean, on the what I was overly impressed with, beyond everything, but when I went to press, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, you're literally in everything. So I want to talk about that because, I feel like we've had this conversation so many times about press and magazines and print and should I wait for my project to be published for 2 years and then they publish it and it's an on 1-page article and it's like everyone's pissed off that, that project's been waiting for 2 years. What is your general thought on press?
I always welcome opportunities to talk about our work in a meaningful way and to showcase our work to a broader audience. So if the press opportunity provides both of those, then I'm very much for it. It takes a very long time. We just had a publication come out 2 weeks ago, I think. The client first called us, I think in November or December of 2017. And then, how the cycle of our projects work these days, they're like very long, 3 to 4 years from when the client first calls us until they move into their house. And then often they're moving into their house. That includes all the design, all the municipal approvals and the entire construction, but then often they're moving in the fall and then the landscape isn't completed until the spring. And then sometimes we don't want to photograph it for another year because all of the plants aren't grown in and they look really fake and new. And then we get it photographed in the summer, we edit the photos, we do the selects, we get to the final ones. And then sometimes because it's so green, the publication doesn't want it featured until their May or June issue. So it could be the one that just came out a couple of weeks ago was almost 5 years after the client first called us. And it's the type of project that we don't focus on anymore.
Right.
So you have this like reno that looks great, and I'm happy for the opportunity to, for the recognition and to be in this particular publication. But then you have people calling saying, oh, I bought the exact same size house and I have the exact same budget and I want that same reno 5 years later. And it's a really difficult conversation to be, to try and explain why that's in this publication and why this isn't our focus and that
So
somebody else could do a better job at it.
How do you explain that it's not your focus?
Well,
that was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Don't you understand how this
we've
works?
Grown and changed. I think often it just comes back to budget. And I think that, it's something we talk about all the time in the office. And I know you guys talk about it a lot too, but potential clients now having an understanding of what things cost, especially with how much the economy has changed in the past 2 years. That compounded with what high-end construction actually costs, what modern detailing actually costs. And everyone has that one like cousin or neighbor that built their entire house for, a fraction of what it would cost for us to design and detail that same size house today. And so I think, we don't qualify our projects based on scale. If this particular project I was just talking about that was published a couple of weeks ago, if somebody had that same size house on that same size lot and wanted to do a significant reno with today's budget, we do focus more on new construction, but I wouldn't necessarily turn it away if they wanted, meaningful architecture and they understood what our offering is and why they would hire us for it. It's more that the budget that this client had 5 years ago can't get them that now. Even when I was doing the interview for this article, the writer asked, we have this one window that's 17 feet high with no mullions. It's just this like expansive piece of glass that frames a tree. And he asked what he wanted to know what something like that would cost. And I realized that the entire window package for that entire house at the time was $43,000. And we just got a quote for a house that's not very much bigger last week that's $130,000. Like it's just, you can't even compare. And it's so difficult to explain. And that's more why it wouldn't still be the same kind of project. But we do focus now more on new construction and bigger houses.
It's funny. I feel like you and I are in a very similar spot where, we're the same way. We're focusing a lot more on new construction, but for the right renovation project, we would consider it. But we're starting to get to a point where, most of these renovation calls are coming in and they're, let's say under $1 million. And the way that we're structured now and the way our management works, it doesn't make sense. Like if someone wants to pay us to do it, that's fine. But the understanding is that there's going to be an enormous cost for us to manage a project that is under $1 million that financially might not make sense.
Right. And I think also now with how busy all of the trades are and how particular everyone's being about the types of projects they're taking on and all the other factors we were talking about, sometimes doing a reno of that scale is more expensive than the new construction. And especially when you factor in our design fees on something like that, which is almost exactly like what you described with the management fees. And sometimes there's reasons to do that, if it's a heritage home or if it's in a tree protected zone or ravine lot or whatever. And then the understanding going in is that it's going to cost more because of this. But I think that that's a very, very, very small percentage of people that would make that choice. And I think knowing what the experience is going to be like, they would choose new construction. Even, I'm sure you've encountered this too, but even, when you do those massive renos where you're, gutting the existing house and adding on and underpinning the basement, at the end, we and the clients and typically the builder say, if we knew it was going to be all of this, it would have made more sense to do it as a new construction.
Yeah, we've definitely had that conversation, and oftentimes the reason that we don't is because they wouldn't have been able to build the same house.
Yeah.
Because of zoning?
Because of zoning. It's like,
that's another good reason for it.
And it is, but you've $1 million house and then they add on and they do a full gut, and next thing you know, they spend $3 million renovating a house where it's like you could have built a really nice house for $4 million on that lot.
Yeah. There's like a couple tests that I always sort of ask in those initial calls. And one is, if you're okay with the existing parking situation, because if you're changing a 1-car garage into a 2-car garage, that's new construction. That's sort of the threshold where you have to switch over. If you're okay with the existing ceiling height, because if you want to raise your whole second floor, that you're also, demolishing the entire envelope around the second floor because you're raising the roof and redoing the windows at the appropriate height. And those are the two big ones.
It's funny how zoning can mess with you, though. I've seen I've seen a house be built around a house. They had this little like 20 by 20 cottage, and they end up building a brand new house, and they left the 20 by 20 cottage in the middle of the house.
I've seen that too.
And
that's crazy.
Only to then get a CO and then pull a renovation permit.
Yeah.
Get a renovation permit to remove the house. It's like, guys, we all know what we're doing here. Like, I get on paper that like it doesn't fly, but we're human beings. Like we can adapt, right? And it's like, nope, you got to build the house around the house.
Yeah, no, this bureaucratic system, especially here, is not logical or adaptable. We have in Toronto, when you need to get variances and to go to committee of adjustment and go outside of the zoning bylaws, it's typically an additional 6+ months to the process if you're just building as of right. And so we have people call all the time and they'll say, we want to build, but not go to committee of adjustment. And the zoning bylaws don't work on certain size lots at all. Like it's impossible to build a house without going to committee. For example, you need to have a parking space behind the front wall of the house, which is usually a garage. And if you're on a lot that's smaller than 40 feet wide, making a parking space, subtracting that from the ground floor plate is too much. So we raised the entire house so that you have like 17 stairs outside, and the ground floor or the main level is actually above the garage. But then you're not allowed your front porch or your back deck, any platforms on the outside of the building, to be higher than, a certain 1.2 meters above grade. So then you have to go to committee for those. And also when you raise the ground floor, it becomes a 3-story house, and most of the areas are zoned for 2 stories. So it's actually impossible to build certain houses without going to committee, and it's almost impossible to build modern houses without going to committee. We've tried it. There were times when I wanted a project badly enough that I was willing to tell the client that we would try it and try not going to committee. And it's just, you make so many compromises, and it's not something I'll do again. Like I regret building the house that conforms with all the bylaws.
Going back to the marketing and press. Mm-hmm. So obviously I the way you answered it was perfect. Like obviously if it works, if it's a mutually beneficial thing and it's going to showcase your work and you can talk about it in a really good way. But when you think of media in general, magazines, social media, blogs, internet, like as an architect, where is your focus, and where do you want to be showing up? And if you are putting focus into it, like which part are you putting focus towards?
So like you, I focus on Instagram mostly. We do a lot of videos. I do a lot of stories explaining, what the process is, what the world of architecture is like, why you should hire an architect, what construction costs are. My approach to social media, which I guess, covers your whole question of all types of media, is that I feel like there's not a lot of transparency into our industry. In our world, there seems to be, and I think it's so crazy that others don't. But when people call me to build a house for the first time, they have no idea about what's going on with the trades. They have no idea about material shortages or what architectural fees are or how builders charge. And so I was getting annoyed by, having those kinds of questions and not understanding why people didn't know. And so I took to Instagram to try and educate the general public, and hoping that people who are thinking about one day building a house will follow along and will have a better understanding of what goes into, our process and what the industry is like. I think a goal is always to just get in front of new people. And so, aside from Instagram, I like different publications, not always being in the same ones. I like the national publications or international publications. We are doing work outside of Ontario as well, outside of Canada too. So it never hurts to have those things mentioned and to be featured in front of like entirely new communities. But I think the goal is always to draw them back to our Instagram and back to sort of that conversation.
And taking that opportunity to educate. Yeah.
Like I had a potential client who he interviewed, he had this crazy process where he Googled like modern architects in Toronto, and he started with a list of 70 architects, and then he ranked their websites. Your face right now. He ranked their websites, and then narrowed it down to, I think, 20 or something that he called, and then he ended up interviewing 12 because 8 didn't call him back. And I understand I went to like the final 5, and he told me 3 of the other 4, and I consider them to be peers and to be architects, good architects with integrity and people that feel responsibility to the environment and to collaborative approaches and all of the things. And he ended up going with not an architect to design his house. And then he just emailed me on the weekend. He did the same process with builders, and he just chose his builder, and it was the same thing. I think he made the selection based on price. And so it's so, I think he's going to end up with a really disappointing product. I think it's a big property, and it's going to be a big budget house, and I think it's not going to perform in the way he wants it to. And I don't think the process is going to be, one that's enjoyable for him or even appropriate for a house of that scale. And
I don't think it's going to be enjoyable. Sorry to cut you off, but anyone.
It's not. And I just I don't want that to happen. Like, I don't need to be his architect. I don't need to be everyone's architect, but I want people that decide to build houses with architects and people that decide to build custom houses. There's certain things that should be in place, and they should have a good process, and they should, factor in certain things. And that's what I'm trying to educate to prevent.
What was his purpose in emailing you about the builder that he chose?
I think he's trying to say this. I think he's trying to keep in touch, and I think he wants to tell me about the different builders that he spoke to in the industry and what he learned about in exchange for me to maybe look at his plans and give him my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems like he's looking for something for nothing.
Where's my red flag?
Right, where it's like, you didn't hire me in the first place, and now you're like circling back and you want my opinion on things, but that's why you hire me.
Exactly.
I just I'm sitting here thinking like to spend the time to research 70 architects and narrow it down to 20, call 12,
and
go down to 5.
And then I'm
like,
not
this is going to be. Yeah, and this is going to be the process through that whole build. Like, he's going to be like, so I called 70 lumber yards, and they were all within $10 of each other, but this one here said that they would match anyone. And it's like, I feel like that's going to be this wildly micromanaged project.
Can we guess at what he does for a living?
You can guess.
Nick, what's your idea?
I didn't give that any thought. I don't know.
I feel
research?
like he has to own his own business.
No, I feel like he's in like medical research or something.
No, the medical clients are the best ones, I find.
Okay.
We call these types of clients maximizers. I don't know if that's an official term, but when they need to overturn every stone and they don't trust your professional expertise until they've exhausted all the resources. and all the options themselves. And you're exactly right. It goes through every single part of the project.
That's so frustrating too, where it's like, I found with those clients too that you think you're going to be able to earn their trust, right? And you're like, I'm going to get to a point where we make a decision and they trust me. And the ones that I've kind of pushed through and carried on with, I found that it's that way until the end. Like with every decision, like where do you want your hardware? I would put it here, and then they're going to send you 6 different photos of where they think it looks good and how they saw this person do that. And I'm like, well, why did you even ask me then? Just tell me, put tape on there wherever you want it. Like, we'll do it where you want it if that's how it's going to be. Just never ends.
Yeah, I've really changed how we vet our clients, because I don't find that that's a productive working relationship. And I think that the end product suffers when, none of those things are cohesive. Like if the hardware is at 36 inches because your friend did it, but, something else happened because of this, that doesn't make for, a holistic end product. And so we try and vet out those clients and establish early on whether they are going to trust our professional opinion.
Yeah, the whole trust thing is, it's both ways. We have to trust our client, and they need to trust us. And it's frustrating when it's like, hey, I was doing research and I found this product and it says it's better than that one. It's like, and I've had conversations where they're like, we hired you as the professional. Why wouldn't you know that? And I'm like, I'm a human being. Mm-hmm. Like, we are, we're not designed to be perfect. Like, I spend a lot of time researching new product. My team does. We're always trying to improve our process, and it's but we're not going to catch everything. And there's always going to be a better option out there. And frankly, maybe you didn't pay for it. Maybe that is a better product, but it's twice as much. And we were sticking to a budget. The trust thing is very real, and it's it's necessary. And the fact that you're sniffing that out in the beginning is so important.
Yeah. Sometimes that can be done respectfully. Like, I think there's always appropriate times for clients to find something. And often, like we've had like a beautiful light fixture that a client found on their own, or, a certain type of tile or whatever it might be. I love being collaborative with the clients if they understand the way that the process works and they, know which areas they can go and research. And we have one of our clients is like just loves learning and wants to know everything about construction and building science, but in such a respectful way, and is always, very self-aware and doesn't want to overstep and doesn't want to ask too many questions. And it's so enjoyable to work with people that want to be part of the process. Like, as much as it's great when you have the clients that are like, here are the keys, I'll be back in 2 years. Not that that's ever happened to me. It's nice to work with clients that are truly collaborative and have the same end goals, which isn't just a finished house tomorrow, long-term goals.
Right. Something you said earlier, I wanted to ask about, you had, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you had said, what is architecture and what is not architecture, and defining that. And I wanted to know what did you define as architecture? For
me, it's a very experiential thing. It's a very intuitive process that comes up with an end result that's a space for living for a particular person. It's highly customized for that person. All of the finishes, all of the details, all of the framed views and the flow and everything go back to that original experience and are part of the whole. And so, whether it's the building, whether it's the finishes, whether it's the details, the approach to the house from the street, from when you drive up with your car, that's all how we define our architecture, and what we're trying to produce.
Do you think everyone appreciates architecture?
No, definitely not.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
And I get to elaborate on that. I think, the majority of what we're talking about here is custom homes.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of, let's just say America and Canada, I don't know much about Canada, but I would assume it's very similar, that the majority of people live in a very average home. It's built by a production builder. It's nothing special. It's just a house, and that's all they care about. How big can I get a house? Can I get my 3-car garage? You know, I don't care. I just want it to be new. I don't want any issues. But I wonder if even in that situation, are they actually appreciating the way that house was built? And do they step into a house, you know, that maybe their friend had custom built and walk in and realize, wow, this is much nicer than mine because it's more thoughtful? Where it's like, maybe asking if everyone appreciates architecture was the wrong way to ask it, and more about, do you think everyone has the capability of understanding it?
I don't think the same person that's going to walk into their friend's house and understand that it's more thoughtful is going to want that like mass-produced home. I think it takes the person who's aware of what can come with that thoughtfulness. That's the type of person that would call an architect as part of their process. I think also there's a lot of things that you don't see. Like anyone can go into someone else's house and recognize that it's like, you know, gold plated and eel skin walls and shiny marble, and their house is just drywall and engineered hardwood. And I think a lot of people that would move into those mass-produced homes will feel, oh, it's like, you know, we all wake up when someone flushes the toilet in the morning, or like our house gets very hot in the summer and our AC is running on full blast. But I don't think they realize the differences in comfort and performance, and what's actually available if it's done correctly.
I think it comes down to, Nick, just people valuing different things. You know, what the cost of that is worth. I think some people may appreciate it, but when it comes to spending the money on it, it's not high up enough on their list of things to value. Sure. Where right. I'm sure that most of your clients, Brenda, are probably very specific as to what they want, have a decent budget, and they highly value what they do enough that they're not looking at 70 other architects when they're considering you.
Yeah, I think that's very well said about people valuing different things. And I think that's really obvious if you watch like MTV Cribs or Selling Sunset, and you're looking at these like quote unquote amazing homes where design isn't a priority, but size is a priority, and what's featured within the home, like the cars or water fountains, is more of the focus than the architecture.
I'm just gonna throw it out there. Selling Sunset is a bogus show.
I've never seen it,
but I sneaky watch it because some of the homes are really cool, and my wife will walk in and be like, "What are you watching?" And it's, you know, cat fights and like women fighting with each other about
you heard it here
listings.
First.
But some of those homes, I mean, Brenda, you're with me here.
Yo, you can't.
Some of those homes.
No, you're trying to get her to sign up for this. You're putting her on the spot right now. It's like your emails where you're trying.
She made the reference.
I don't disagree. I think they don't spend enough. I watch it for the homes and I stay for the drama, but they don't spend enough time showing the homes. Like the whole house is like a 30-second tour, but there's like a cantilevered pool on the third floor with a glass bottom that you can see. Like there's always something I've never seen before.
I'm like pausing and rewinding it. I was at my I'm gonna give a shout out to my barber Jared at District Barbers in Boston, but I went in there one day and I was in the chair and he had Grand Designs on. And Grand Designs, I don't know if you've seen it, Brenda, but it's you have to watch it. It's
okay.
They
I
have
know this show.
30 seasons, but it's in Australia, New Zealand, and Europe, and they follow builds for years and years. But I sat in the chair. I'm like, how like this isn't something that's on TV. Like you had to download that on YouTube. He's like, oh, you posted about it on Instagram one day, so I put it on because I knew you liked it. And I'm like, damn, dude.
Wow.
And I went in there a couple weeks later, and I sit down, and I'm watching the show.
On Selling Sunset.
He does. And I'm like, is this for me? He goes, no, man, I love this show. The homes are so cool. He's like, but I only watch it here at the shop because if I watched it at home with my girlfriend, she'd give me so much flack. I'm like, I know, but the homes
is on my list. I'm going to watch it. Thank you.
All right. The other one, if you haven't, the Local Project. Do you follow that?
Never heard of it.
Adding it.
Okay. The Local Project is a publication out of Australia. They focus on, Brenda, it's so your speed. And they release like 7 to 10 minute videos, I think like once a week. But I have their publication, like I pay to have the thing shipped from Australia because it's very well done, but their videos are amazing because it's all real slow. Like I feel like the US and video and things like that, everything is so fast, just like Selling Sunset. It's like you get these like 1 to 3 second clips of the house, like fast paced. You're not appreciating anything. The Local Project, they slow everything down. And it's slow and you actually can appreciate the space. Like to the point where it's like you'll see a curtain like flowing in the wind back and forth, and it'll be long enough for you to appreciate that and the shadow it's casting across the countertop. So I don't know
which are those thoughtful details that you're talking about. Okay, I have a lot of videos to catch up on. It sounds like
you do. Well, let's pause the Selling Sunset for a bit and. I don't know how to.
You know what I kind of want to touch on some. And I know briefly kind of touching on it earlier, I looked up the BEAT, Building Equality and Architecture in Toronto that you are involved with, and I kind of want to dig into that. I find it very interesting. Again, we don't have a ton of women on the podcast. Obviously, our industry, primarily men, architecture, primarily men. So, being a young woman involved, I'm like all for this. Again, I have 2 daughters. Nick has 2 daughters and a son. I always tell my oldest, like, I want you to be an architect. Not that I'm ever going to like make her do anything, but I'm like, I feel like you'd be ideal for it. So I think that it's a really good thing. And I kind of want to dig into what that's about, how you got involved, and just hear a little bit more about that.
Okay, so BEAT is a organization with chapters across Canada, and so they're all BEA, and then whichever city they're in. So the Toronto chapter is BEAT, and it's a volunteer-run organization. There's 2 sort of groups of people that run it. So there's an executive board, and then there's an advisory board, and it's I'd say the biggest output, I guess, from BEAT, and it's all about the events, networking opportunities, lectures, different opportunities for conversation with women within the industry. And so I actually did a lecture for them last week. They have BEAT Talks, which is a lecture series mostly for female founders in the architectural practice. And so it was actually, they've been asking me to do one for a while, and I'm just done with Zoom events. Like I'm not sitting on another Zoom panel. I'm not leading another Zoom anything. I find it so impersonal. And so I asked to be their first in-person lecture when they returned. And so we did it just a couple of weeks ago, and I had them here in my office. And the people that come out to the BEAT events are just really, the types of people that want to network, and the types of people that want to create these relationships that will, help them in the industry, having someone to call and ask questions, even just like DMing on Instagram, but just knowing more women in architecture and being able to use that, to help. I had 2 women here that recently started their own architecture practices, and they stayed. I think they were the last 2 here, and they were just asking me so many questions about, branding and fees and how you get your first clients. And it was, so it's a really, really great forum, and all of the events are small, small enough that, you know, you end up talking to almost everyone that's there, and they're long enough for meaningful networking.
See, that's what I find so cool about that. Obviously, I'm not a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a woman in our industry, but I do look at it, you know, at my daughters as they get older, and it's like to have a network of people that you could turn to, you know, within your industry, and kind of have that backing and understand that other people have been in your position. And I just think there's a different dynamic with that. That I would be like, that's something where I'd show my oldest daughter and be like, yo, check this out right here. And she'd be so pumped about it. And it's really cool because I know even for us, Nick, you know, when we started building and we started our businesses, it's like we didn't have anyone to turn to our age within this industry locally. You know, there's a handful of people, but who do you ask questions to? Who do you go to for advice? How are you comparing pricing structure, branding, all of that stuff? And then you realize that there are a network of people, but our network, again, is primarily men. And if you're a woman looking to get into this industry, just the numbers, the percentages, you're going to be a minority there. And to have this group and this organization that's kind of getting together and backing these young women who want to get into this and who are in this industry, to me, that's just amazing.
Yeah, I think that learning how to tap into a network like that is a skill that didn't come so naturally to me. Like growing up, I was taught to, you know, work hard for what I want, and that if I want something done right, I should do it myself. But I've learned, you know, in my time in this industry and through these types of organizations and networking, I've learned about like the power of the collective knowledge and of brainstorming with somebody, you know, which has so much to do with how I run the business and how we talk to our clients and how we collaborate with the trades. But it's really important to have that kind of network and to be able to provide opportunities for people. I also have, you know, a number of architects that I know that are just starting out or that are you know, junior to me, I guess, in their professional trajectory. And when I get those types of phone calls for a job I would have done 5 years ago and not now, I'm always happy to, you know, pass to them and kind of create this, you know, network of passing work between people. I think also, and this is part of what I spoke about in my beat talk too, but when you ask me how, you know, how I define the architecture that we create and what we focus on, I talked about like the experience and the intuitive part of it. And for me, I think those are qualities associated with being a woman. Obviously there's exceptions, but I think those are, you know, women are more expressive and more intuitive and experience positive emotion more intensely than men. And so if this is our focus within the industry, then for me, it's important. You know, that's part of why my team is female and why I have these networks with women, because it helps with that side and that quality of the architecture.
Yeah, it's tough too, because it's the type of thing, right, where it's like you have to dance around it, and there's certain questions that you don't want to ask. But for me, I also agree when it comes to design and the thoughtfulness and the mindfulness, men and women, in my opinion, operate on two different wavelengths. And there's a lot of things that I, you know, being around girls all the time where I just, it comes so naturally to them. And to me, it's more I have to work to get that. And I see that with my wife all the time. And like them, you know, women being in design, women being architects, it makes perfect sense to me. But in order to grow that community, it's just like anything else. It has to be approachable. Like it has to be warm. It can't be scary. It can't be like this male chauvinistic macho industry, which it's been for so long. Even on the design end with like architects, it's these like the old men who are like stuffy and very rigid. And it's like, I don't necessarily want somebody designing a space that has those personality traits. And it's like, I would love to be able to bring in these young women who just have a different outlook, a different mindset, a different approach, and it like freshens the industry for me. And again, I'm like all for that 110%, and I love to see it. And I do think that the only way that the industry is going to get more numbers are by people doing what you're doing and getting the word out there and educating them and creating this community that feels like something that these girls can do, that they're not out of place, that they feel like they belong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for a while that was part of my sales pitch, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I think, I design houses and I also run my own household, and I'm, the one that has to figure out like where my kids keep all their stuff and how I use my laundry room and how I use my kitchen and all of the things that go into the use of a house. Is like, I'm more in that and more relatable to my clients than some of those old stuffy male architects you described. And so I think that's, an advantage of working with somebody who's of a similar age or demographic or experience to the end user of the house.
Yeah, 100%. It's just so cool to see, even on your website, like going on and looking at your team, and it's all these girls in like black dresses, and I was like, you have on bright lipstick. I was like, this picture's so badass. Like, this is sick. She's like, I don't know. I'm totally down with it. It's so cool. I love that you're doing that. I'm a huge proponent of that. And, anything that we can do to help with that, I'm sure you guys have everything covered. But if there's something that comes up or spreading the word or whatever, definitely let us know.
Thank you. We've been doing a fun Instagram series with our girls. I also have a daughter who's 6, and we'll take them to site and ask them questions, or we'll do an Ask Me Anything like on Instagram, and people will say like, how much does it cost to build a house? And we'll ask the girls. We have them saved in our Instagram videos, but it's just fun to include the next generation and to hear what they have to say, and try and, as much as we're trying to educate everyone else, like do it with the kids as well.
Yeah, it's cool. And with families like yours or with families like mine or Nick's, the kids are around that and they're brought up around it, so they understand it, and it's their normal. I think, getting the word out there and having other people kind of see what we're doing and how our family engages with what we do is so important, because those are the people that we're going to be able to affect. Like, we're already affecting our immediate family. It's reaching those other people who, aren't involved in the industry, or potentially have a daughter who would love to be, but they don't know anyone. That for me, I don't know. I just know, coming into business, being 18 to 25 years old and being scared shitless, being an 18 to 25-year-old male, going into the building department, dealing with vendors, dealing with subcontractors, contractors, and then, I don't know, maybe that's just me, but like, it's not the warmest and most inviting community of people. And like, I feel like it would be scary for a woman too to just hop into that and be like, I'm gonna dig my heels in and I'm here because I belong. And anything to make that transition a little more tolerable and easier for these young women, I'm totally behind.
I want to ask the hard question, like, how, when you are hiring people, right? What if a male comes to you and wants to join your firm? Like, what does that conversation look like?
So we're not exclusive. I actually do consider all candidates, and we've had, in the past couple of years, I think we've had 2 men come through the office. I think it goes back to what we were talking about before, and looking for, certain qualities and a certain approach to design, and, understanding it the way that we approach it from our office, like that, the experiential design process, becoming close with our clients, understanding the nuances of our clients' lives and how that applies to what their house can look like. And in the past, I've felt that there were men that exhibited those qualities, and I thought that they would be a good fit for the team. In both cases, I was not correct. Those were sort of short-lived positions, but it's not. It's intentional. It's an intentional group in a way, but I'm open-minded.
Sure. I think, I mean, to flip it to things that I deal with, there's positions in my business that, I would love to advertise and be like looking for a female for this role. Mm-hmm. And and I've been told I can't do that. I also can't ask someone how old they are. Like I've obviously learned these things, but one of the reasons why is I want more women in the industry, and I want them to feel invited, where it's like we're primarily male in my company. I have 2 women on my team, one that runs client liaison for our home care and one that's a project manager. But I would love to have more female on our team, because I think that they add like we've been talking about, a completely different level of thinking to our process. And it's hard. And Tyler, I think you said it a couple minutes ago. It's like, it's weird. Like, we have to dance around these things.
Yeah, that's the hard part for me. It's like, I don't know. I guess I could equate it to being sick, where like if you're sick, you don't want everyone to treat you like you're sick. You just want them to treat you normal. And it's like, what's the right thing? What's the wrong thing? Like, there's an elephant in the room. Do you address it? Is it just normal? And like with designers, a lot of time, typically interior designers are women. So like that's more normal, but it's not as common for architects. And then it's not as common for engineers. And then obviously labor. So it's like, what's the right and what's the wrong thing? We are looking to get another female guest on, and like I'm drafting my email saying like, we love to get people on who deal with finance, and we'd like love to have women on. And I'm like, do I say that or do I not say that? Like, does she want me to think that I'm reaching out to her because she is a woman, or because I respect her financial insight? And then I'm like, I'm just going to take the woman part out of it, and just, we're just looking for her financial insight. And I don't know what's right and I don't know what's wrong. And again, that's me. I'm in a house full of women. My dog's a girl, and I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. Or if any is. Like, it's tough to try and figure out how to navigate that whole situation.
I'm with you, Tyler. I'd like to believe that that's probably a big reason why it's so hard to, have more women in the industry, is because speaking as a male, like, don't know how to approach this in a way where it's like, I want to be inclusive. I don't want it to be about the fact that they're women. I'm trying to like overcompensate for the fact that like, no, there's not enough women here, so let's bring more women. And it's like, well, I want you to hire me because I'm good at my job, not because I'm a woman. I'm like, I know, like, that is very much a factor as well. I'm just also trying to do something for humanity, and it is. I mean, I don't know, Brenda. I feel like you have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that somebody can always be offended by anything that you say, and that we're conditioned now to be so politically correct because everything we say is, forever imprinted on the internet and can never be retracted or, edited for whatever future thing becomes the new woke situation.
Woke.
But I agree with you. I think, there's both sides of it. Like, we were just in my Beat Talk actually last week, I was talking about that quote from Zaha Hadid, where she says, I'm not a female architect, I'm an architect, right? You want to be recognized as, equivalent to or more celebrated than your peers for the work and not for anything else. But it's an added bonus, and I don't think it would hurt to say that as well, right? Like, you are the best fit for this job because of all of these reasons, but also it's a bonus because you want more diversity and to support more women in the
That's
industry.
A great way to put it, yeah, as a
Wait,
bonus.
Can I ask you a question, Nick? Am I allowed to do that?
It depends on the question.
Am I allowed to? Well, I'm just curious
No,
how your female project manager, like how her projects are managed differently than your male project managers, or if you find a difference at all.
I don't think I can answer that, and not because I don't want to. More in the sense that we have collectively as a company restructured the way we're building, like running our business, and a lot of she's actually our only current project manager.
Okay.
So she's doing much better than the rest of them.
She is doing much better.
She's the best.
The rest of them got fired.
No, the male project managers actually moved to site supers, and in residential, oftentimes that role is kind of both. But we're taking more of a commercial approach where there is a full-time project manager and a site super, and just frankly, the males wanted to be in the field, and that's where they really thrived. I would say, generally speaking, as like just being part of the company, yeah, she's far more organized and structured than her male counterparts. That's my general feedback on it, is that she just takes a more structured and organized approach. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why, in some of the jobs that we're trying to hire, I want a female, because I just feel as though they've done they typically will do that job better.
They can just handle so much. Brenda, you have kids?
Yeah,
like,
3.
We have 2. My wife handles like working full time, our entire social calendar, all the girls' athletics, all our scheduling, everything, like getting the house cleaned, organizing, and doesn't miss a beat. All I have to do is work and like show up, and I can't do that half the time. And she she gets stressed, but she keeps it inside. She works through it. Like me, I'd flip out and throw something through a wall. And like she does it effortlessly. And then like when the tables turn and I have like 2-3 days where I do stuff, I'm pulling my hair, and like I'm like, why can't you help with this? Why can't you help with that? And she's like, I do that every single day, and I don't say a word and just go about it. And I feel like their mental and physical capacity is way greater than men. Like we're just primal beasts who like can do the task at hand, and past that it's like hit or miss.
It's the multitasking.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I need lists, and then like at that point it's still like I'm not really doing anything more than just checking off a list. Like I'm not multitasking.
And
but I need someone to create that list.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just gonna say, I need the list. I'm not creating the list.
Yeah.
Brenda, how old are your kids? I heard
10,
6.
8, and 6.
10, 8, 6. So I'm almost 6, almost 4, and almost 2. So
yeah, I have 8 and 5.
It's really the best age. I mean, I don't know, every age is the best age, but I love when they just like, still look up to you so much, but they're people now with like opinions and personalities. But you can do no wrong in their eyes. I find it's like just amazing to be a parent of kids this age.
You know what? A couple at the beginning of the pandemic, I had looked at a job for a psychologist, and we were talking about kids, and I was saying how my kids were at the best age. And she said, what's really interesting? I see a lot of patients, and a lot of them have kids and everything. And when this whole pandemic started, every single one of my clients talked about how they were so lucky that their kids were the age that they were in this very moment in time, because if they were older, they would have been having to deal with this, or younger, they would have had to deal with this. And she said it was just really interesting to hear everyone just really appreciated the age of their kids in their current state. And that was from 0 to 18. Like no one ever, like she said, no one ever came into her office during that time and said, man, I wish my kid was a different age because my life would be better. So like you just said, it's, you say that they're at the best age and there's all these reasons as to why. And I'm sitting here thinking that, my, 5, 3, and 1.5-year-old are, the best age because they're funny and one of them can't talk and the other one can talk enough for both of them.
I think it's true. Every age is the best age. You'll have to circle back with me in 5 years, 6 years when we get to teenager. but as of yet, every age has been the best age. And even like Brenda said, this age now with my 8-year-old, like you have adult conversations with them, but they still respect you and they still listen to you and they still want to be around you. And it's kind of, you've hit this sweet spot where they don't resent you yet. You know, they still want hugs, they still want to snuggle with you, and they still listen to you. And I think in a few years it's going to be a slightly different story.
My 10-year-old, we send each other funny TikToks. Like I'll wake up in the morning and I'll have like 4 hilarious TikToks that he found in the night and sends to me. It's like the best way to communicate. But pandemic-wise, I don't know if I agree with your psychologist client. I feel like my kids were such a hard age. Like it was so, my 6-year-old now, in Ontario, we were in like very restricted lockdown for 2 years. Like we had it bad. And my 6-year-old now was 4 when it started. She was in preschool. She was in her 2nd year of preschool. Oh my God. We've been in pandemic for so long. But she was in junior kindergarten and senior kindergarten on Zoom, not totally independent, but like having to log on every day. And I was trying to work and I found it like just extremely challenging.
Yeah, we were at that same, I think that was the biggest challenge, just being that I think the socialization for one, our oldest, very social, not an issue if you kept her out of school for a few years, but the youngest like definitely needs the social interaction, and then having them kind of log on and prompting them through things and them not understanding how to do that. Like my wife was basically part-time teacher, full-time, professional working. And I think she struggled a lot with that, but it's the same thing as before. Like she knew better to even ask me to try and do that. Cause I think the one time I tried to log on, I was like, I don't even know how to get on to their school program. Like I'm locked out of the computer right now.
I just asked my husband like the other day, my son was trying to submit something and I said, well, just open the Google Classroom app on your phone. And he was like, I don't have it. Yeah. And I was like, how have you survived all these years without, like, how am I the only one that's done Google Classroom on my phone for this family?
It's true. The only things I respond to on emails or when I see them come in, it's like, you need to sign on this so the kid can have like ice cream or popsicles at school field day. And I'm like, yo, I signed the permission form. She's like, really? Like, that's it? Like, I just want to make, I feel like that's traumatizing. Like if you're at school and all your friends are having ice pops and you're just like, sorry, your parents didn't sign the form.
Priorities.
Yeah. We had completely different.
We just had April break or April vacation, and it was like a foot in the mouth thing. It was Friday, and my wife was like, I don't know what we're going to do all week. The kids are out of school. I'm like, what are they out of school for? And she looks at me. She goes, really? I'm like, oh, is it April vacation? She goes, really? I'm like, yeah, I probably should know that. She goes, yeah, it would be nice for you to know that.
Nick, my wife, she's in furniture production, and she used to travel overseas a bunch because they do a lot of their production there, and she hasn't traveled since the pandemic, and her first trip is this Friday. She's leaving to go to Vietnam for like 2 weeks, and we haven't done this since the kids were little. And she's like, we're driving home from being away yesterday, and she's putting like the softball app on my phone and the school app on my phone, and it's the same thing. She's like, you never had, like, Selby's been playing travel softball for 2 years and you don't have the app on your phone. No wonder why you ask me when every game is. And I'm like, well, you keep telling me, so you're basically enabling all of this. If you were just like, yo, figure it out, I'd probably have to download the app myself.
A friend of mine just went to like an all-inclusive resort for a wedding for 4 days, and she was showing me on her phone the spreadsheet that she made for her parents when she was gone, with like where they need to be, who picks them up for carpool, like each kid is a picky eater, so what goes in their lunch, like just this whole thing. And I realized, like, a girlfriend of mine messaged me a few weeks ago and asked if I wanted to go to Paris this past weekend for the holiday weekend. And I was like, I can't go to Paris for a long weekend. And I realized it's not that I can't go to Paris for a long weekend. It's that I don't think I have the like mental and emotional capacity to make that spreadsheet for somebody else.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, it works really well when it's in my head, but as soon as I have to start putting it in writing and somebody has to ask me questions about the stuff that I just like do regularly, it's not worth
easy. Yeah,
it's not worth a weekend in
do
Paris.
it.
Yeah.
We flew to San Francisco for a wedding. We were there for 48 hours. And my brother and his husband came in to watch our kids. And my wife's putting together that list, like what they should eat, what time they go to bed, blah blah blah. And my brother texts us and says, "Hey, you have a parking spot for us, right? Because we live in the city." And Meg's like, "All right." So apparently, like that's the most important thing to him, so he doesn't need the list. And we came home 48 hours later, and it was like, "What time are you gonna be home?" All right, we really need to leave. And we get in. They literally just like bombed out of the house. They're like, this was ridiculous. You didn't let us know. Like, we didn't know what to feed them. Like, we didn't know what time. Like, they're kids. Just feed them. Like, it was like we like ruined their life because we didn't write it all down. For
48 hours.
Yeah, for 48 hours. I was like, you couldn't figure out. Yeah, no. I was like, you couldn't figure out what to feed a child for 48 hours. So funny. Like, we're so tired. I'm like, zero.
I've been tired for 10 years.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing when you start hanging around people who are younger than you or don't have kids, and they start to tell you about how busy they are and how they don't have time for this, or it's so hard to save money. And I'm just like, I can't even be involved in this conversation right now because
you're just making me mad, man.
Just like have one, and then your perspective on everything will change because you'll realize that you had every opportunity to save money. You had nothing but free time, and life was extremely uncomplicated.
Yeah. We are digressing. I want to go back to architecture.
Good.
What is modern architecture to you?
So it's a couple of things. You have really hard questions. I think the main things for us is how different materials come together, how different planes come together, how materials interact with one another, and the materials that we choose. You know, we use a lot of natural materials and warm materials, and I think for us, that's how we define modern. And then really just the detailing. So I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, but we never like to see the functional elements whenever possible. So, you know, having a drop ceiling so that you can have a cove at every window and the roller shades are completely concealed and drapery tracks are completely concealed. And if possible, you have your air diffuser up in that system as well. So you're not seeing any of those elements. You're not thinking about how the house functions, and it's just kind of this like really balanced Zen sort of space where everything, you know, kind of seamlessly fits together and meets up. And that's I think how I would define it more than anything else. Like, I think you can have a pitched roof house that fits that description. You can have a house with arches in the interior that fits that description. But it's really just about how things come together, how you treat the connections. When I say that, I'm thinking specifically of like, you know, applied baseboards versus having a wall that floats like half an inch above the floor, how the lighting is integrated, how all the functional elements are integrated and concealed and detailed.
It's funny that you mentioned like materials and, you know, how they interact with each other. This is something that's been a topic of our office a lot, is dissimilar materials and how they interact with one another. And I'm a real big proponent for, you know, they need to be separated. Where one of the things that, you know, like I think of bathroom vanities. The bathroom vanity gets slammed against the corner and you end up caulking that stone to the wall. And it's not that it's a bad detail or a wrong detail, but it's just not a detail that I feel is ever executed really well. Where it's like, well, what if that was designed to stay off the wall and you had a really intentional gap? And another one recently we've actually done on the last 3 islands is everyone wants this waterfall island. and the stone goes down, and they scribe the stone to the wood floor, and then you have this stone that hits the wood floor, and it's fine. It works. But what I always hated the fact that, you're scribing it. You're scribing that stone, and now that it's a really high contrast area where that white stone against the brown floor, like, it's not a nice straight line. Where instead what we've done is we've actually put a piece of metal, or we've even used thin 1/8-inch black rubber, where the stone comes down and has a really crisp straight line, and then a tiny, tiny little shadow gap. And whether that's metal or whether it's rubber, it's set back enough where when you're standing up at 6 feet or 5 feet, however tall you are, and you're looking down, it looks no different than if that stone touched the ground. But what it is doing is it's enunciating that really crisp, straight white line, which is what it was intended to look like. Mm-hmm. It was never intended to look like a scribed piece of stone. It was intended to look like a straight white line.
I think that's a perfect example. Like, that crisp line, that's what makes it modern. Whereas the opposite of that would be having like a marble baseboard that wraps around it to cover up that like scribed connection or just that butting together. One of my rules is we can never have two materials meet each other in the same plane.
Yes.
It looks terrible.
Hard.
There's no way to do it well. So either, you have to fur out, build out the millwork or fur out the wall so they're in a different plane, or you introduce a third material between the two of them, like you described, a rubber, a metal, or a shadow gap or reveal. Just something that's very intentional so that each material has its own personality and its own function, is accentuated and separated.
It's like if you have anything flush, even if it looks good when you initially install it, and you come back and anything's moved, it's like it's not flush anymore.
Yeah, it has to stop, and that word intentional is a huge buzzword for us, where it's, if that material is going to stop and truly need to be flushed out with something else, then it, I think of plaster, for example. If we're gonna flush out with a piece of wood with the plaster wall, then that plaster needs to have a stop bead. Mm-hmm. And that stop bead needs to be intentional. And then when you bridge that to the next material, there's a tiny, tiny little pencil line gap. And maybe it's the thickness of a piece of cardboard or piece of paper, but it's a very intentional line. And it's the only way you can truly transition. Because if you try to, just mud to it and then sand it flush, like Tyler said, like, something's going to move. And I think if you can think of every scenario when you're putting things together about, what that looks like, or hey, is this a really intentional moment, or am I just bridging it with a really simple way is like, if you're going to caulk it, if you're going to try to caulk from the stone to the wall, anything like that, like anytime you bridge it with that caulking, it's, think about, is there another way you could approach this where you didn't have to rely on the success of that caulking stretching through seasons? It's modern architecture is so interesting because I feel like people often consider it to be, minimalism or less is more, or just, the luxury condos that put 1x4 baseboard and say it's modern baseboard, where it's because it's simpler looking. It's like, no, those aren't. There's no intentionality there. It's just you were simplifying, a more complex looking molding and calling it modern. And I think the way you described it about materiality, light, shadow, and just overall space, that's really, for me, I'm with you on that.
The craziest thing about kind of what you guys are able to do with modern architecture for me is there's almost like, obviously there's a budget, but throw the budget out the window. There's almost like no end to it. Like, you could continue to add detail after detail that's not like layering a molding. It's actually peeling that back, where it complicates the build and adds another level of depth and interest to that project, where it's like, yeah, we can hide all of the window treatments. We could have no cabinet hardware. We could have no trim around that, where like there's almost no limit to it on any project where you could continue to refine, and while you're pulling stuff away at the same time, which is crazy. Like, there's a budget that's going to come into play, but if there were none, it's insane what you can do with modern architecture.
And I think this is what you were saying earlier, Brenda, and probably a lot to do with like my first question about, you know, the younger architect versus the older architect with experience. You know, when you do approach it with no budget, yes, it's limitless. You can continue to refine, but oftentimes the reason I think that modern architecture is done poorly is because some sort of constraint was put in place. That could be the budget, or that could be timing. And with experience, you start to realize what are the really important details that can't be sacrificed or compromised, because oftentimes the things that get compromised early on are the things that would have made that space really great.
Yeah, that's exactly how we approach our projects. There's usually, 2 or 3 moments that just define what the project is, and we try to hold on to those regardless of what happens with constraints such as the budget. I think it's exactly what you said. It's why a lot of people hate on modern architecture so much. Firstly, people think that it's cold. And you may have noticed none of the definitions that I gave really, make it that stark or minimalist style. It's minimalist in terms of the detailing, but it's very cold where I live. I don't think so dissimilar from where you live. But I'm such a huge fan of, oversized furniture and a million throw blankets, and like having a very warm and comfortable lifestyle within a space that's detailed in a modern way. But yeah, as soon as you slap on that applied baseboard, if that's the only thing the budget allows for, it changes the entire project.
Right.
See, when modern architecture is done well and styled well, it has some of the most personality of any type of build, like warmth, interest, complexity, the textures and everything. Like, when it's done well, it's the furthest thing from like cold and sterile. I just think when it's done poorly and on a budget, it looks like a hospital.
It's also funny. The local project, I was actually binging them last night on YouTube, and modern is typically, or a lot of modern is very refined, very straight lines and near perfect, execution. And one of the projects that came across when I was watching yesterday wasn't. It was actually an older home that had a lot of character, and part of the home actually had some applied molding, and they kind of switched that up into the addition. And the overall execution wasn't extremely high, but I was watching it, and I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, I want to not like this, but it's still done in a way where the materials are right, the colors are right, and they accepted the fact that this stuff isn't perfect. And instead of trying to pretend it was, they were celebrating it. And I think it goes back to the fact that what is modern, and what is your definition of it, and how it has so much to do with material and the use of that material.
Sometimes it's also just like the proportions of the windows. Do they come all the way down to the floor? Are they really skinny? How does the natural light play with the space? It doesn't have to be everything. And going back to those like poorly done modern hospital houses, there's no thought given to a lot of those elements, right? It's often a flipper who's just trying to do a modern style, but then every window is like a 4x5 square in the middle of symmetrically in the middle of the bedroom, right? And so there's certain elements that have to come together and work together to make it a modern experience in a modern space, but it doesn't have to be everything at the same time.
I'm cracking up because I'm thinking of like all the houses people put up around here, and it's basically like every house can be any style of house. Like, it could be a craftsman, it could be modern farmhouse, and everything's going to be the same, all the windows, like all the whole layout's going to be the same. You're just going to change like the interior exterior finishes, which is like, it's so wrong. And I get, it comes back to what you were saying, Nick, where it's like, can people understand, can people appreciate, can people value it? And I just think there's, you know, there's different strokes for different folks. And the fact that you can kind of keep the same layout in the same house and just switch the finishes around, and somebody's calling it modern versus colonial versus craftsman. You know, there's obviously a lot of people out there who I would say are on the other end of the spectrum as far as design and architecture go.
It's an interesting exercise. I think, you know, a lot of the times when people try to make modern architecture affordable or modern architecture accessible, right, there's sort of this, you know, as you're describing, it's almost like a catalog of styles or finishes, like when you buy a condo, when you go to select from 8 floors, you pick this one. So you select from 8 different architecture styles or 8 different window colors. And that doesn't include most of the elements that we're talking about in our definition or my definition of what makes it modern.
If you don't know, you don't know. Ignorance is bliss.
To many, yes. To us, we're beyond that, and that's
torture.
It's torture
and wasteful.
Yeah.
I mean, now my wife we can't go anywhere. We'll be at a hotel, and my wife's like, I already saw it. I already saw the way the light comes through the window, and it looks like crap. They didn't think that through. I'm like, hey. She's like, you ruined me. I'm like, I'd like to think that I've improved your...
She's educated.
Yeah, your experience
for
in
better
this world.
or for worse.
Enlightened, yeah.
Brenda, thank you for hanging out with us for 2 hours.
We do. Nick, before we wrap, I have like 6 quick questions.
Rapid fire.
Yeah, I think I want to call it like my levity.
I love that you just like you just got prepared.
Yeah.
You were like,
I mean,
ready.
They're not like anything serious, but we talk, you know, business and work in the podcast.
Let me read the first one.
Yeah.
Favorite person on Selling Sunset.
I thought you were going to say on the Modern Craftsman podcast.
No,
Christine.
I was kidding. That wasn't one of the questions. But now
it's a good one.
So
I hope
the first question I feel like is already going to be off limits because we find out when people have children and it's like you don't have a free life. But it'd be, what are you passionate about aside from work / kind of developing your career and business?
Aside from all those
things.
I love reading. I read a lot, fiction and nonfiction. I mean, so much of my life is my kids and design. I'm passionate about like my family and, you know, giving my kids meaningful life experiences, traveling with them, seeing parts of the world.
Cool. So we'll have to follow up with you because one of my questions is if you have like favorite music, movies, books, authors, and I feel like I want to start getting a list of people's favorite books, whether they're fiction, nonfiction. But I feel like that's tough to kind of put people on the spot.
What are you reading right now?
Right now I'm reading The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath.
Ooh.
I just read a really, really long, really sciencey science fiction book that was like very heavy into technical details. It was like 5,000 years in the future. So I needed like something completely different.
That's cool.
I have a lot of favorite books, so I'd love to give you a list.
Yeah, we should. We'll follow up with you and get a list.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a lot of good ones.
What about, all right, if people are coming to visit the Ontario, Greater Toronto area, what's like top 3 things you'd send them to do?
I mean, if they've never been here, Niagara Falls for sure. Go to a Blue Jays game. It's such a great atmosphere. I feel like it's different from other MLB games in other cities. I've been to a couple and I feel like the vibe here is different. And we have such good food here. Like there's so many amazing restaurants and a really vibrant art community. So I'd say like galleries, food, Niagara Falls, and Blue Jays.
I feel like I'm booking my ticket right now.
Yeah, right?
Okay.
All right.
I'll also send you an itinerary.
Do you also want the rental car? Yes!
All right, food. You're going out to dinner this weekend. Friday night, where are you going? What kind of food?
So what's really trendy here is just these sort of like contemporary fusion restaurants with like Asian and French and Mexican influences all together, sharing dishes, like a whole bunch of different dishes with friends. And like, it's so hot the past few days. I just want like a really cold cocktail too, like something summery with like a floating flower.
That's what Nick,
right.
That's Nick's favorite.
I'm not
Floating flowers and umbrellas?
I'll do a floating flower, but it's straight tequila.
Oh,
No
God.
mix.
On a nice warm day. It's gross.
Love
It's
it.
gross here right now. Very hot.
Same. Yeah.
I love the fusion, and I love the shared dishes, because it's like you just get an enormous amount of food, and it's just like, and it's constant. Like they bring out plate after plate after plate after plate,
And
you're
you
just
never remember what you ordered.
No, and it just you just leave, and everyone's like, that was so good. I have no idea what I just ate.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of those types of restaurants here, and there are also a lot of really beautifully designed restaurants. Like the architecture and the interiors is part of your experience, and the music and the vibe, and it's all one.
All right, music.
Which is my favorite.
Music. What's
God.
what's on your phone, your Spotify right now?
So it's like Doja Cat and Elton John,
Okay.
and like everything in between. But I'd say those are like the top two. Like I'm in the mood for one of those two.
Cool.
I feel like everyone that's listening to this right now, I feel like there's a good majority of people that have no idea who Doja Cat is.
It's because I have kids of that age.
Yeah.
I'm also obsessed with like being current, and you know, when I watch the MTV Awards and I don't know who anyone is, like I feel very old and depressed, and then I need to start
Just
putting
don't
all of those
just
on my
don't watch
playlist.
them.
Right. But then I'm obsolete, and I can't be that, because people
Fair.
need to trust my taste and opinion.
Well,
so I
there's
need to
this
know
there's this
everything.
new artist Elton John that you're listening to, so you're definitely you're up with the
A spring
times.
chicken, up and coming. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. I listen to you all the time, so I'm really honored to be
You're the
included.
best. This is awesome.
It's great. And all the episodes are so different. There's always like at least something that I take from every episode that I apply to my business or my practice or my relationships with builders. So it's a great thing. It's a great podcast you guys have built.
We appreciate it, and we'll definitely follow up to get your book list. I don't want to forget about that.
I'd be so happy to
Cool.
share that.
Sweet.
Yeah, you know what? Send us a DM on Instagram,
Okay.
and we'll share that list with everyone.
Nick, you
Okay,
can't
amazing.
leave an email or a podcast giving the other person something to do. That's podcast.
No, it's an
etiquette.
action item. That's how all
podcast
emails
etiquette.
should
That's
end.
my action item, Tyler.
It's an action item. I'm on it.
All right, I'm wrong.
All right,
Okay,
Brenda.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, take
Have
care.
a good night.
See ya.
You too. So you can just X out in that window.
Oh, she already did.
She already got it.
Pro.
Boom. If you guys want to follow her on Instagram, it's Izen Architecture, IZEN Architecture. She's got some cool ass projects.
Yeah, she has a lot going on as well, especially considering that she started her business 7 years ago. It's impressive, and has 3 kids. And her oldest is 10, 8, and she said, I don't know, 5 or
10, 8,
6 or
6.
something. So,
Yeah.
like, she started her business right after she had her second kid.
Yeah. And it's funny, that picture of the team, there's 8 of them in that photo, but it's like they're just you look at that picture like, all right, these chicks are
Yeah,
badass.
it's sick.
But yeah, check her out. You can also check her out on her website, IZEN ARCH.ca.
Dude, I was
That's her
going
website.
through the press tab on her website, and I was like, oh my god, how many projects have been featured? And I'm and you know it's not up to date too. And I think I got up to 28 or something. And then you're considering how much time it takes to get things moving. So it's like, been in business 7 years, assume 6 years is the fastest. Like, you're 4 to 5 projects a year that are getting featured. That's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's like a full-time job in and of itself.
Absolutely. It's one of the most in-demand jobs right now, so I'm told. Sorry, I was pulling up reviews while we were chatting,
Wow.
so I was distracted. Next week we have Jim Dow from Dow Built. We've been trying to get him on for a while, so we're going to talk about how he scaled his company from local to nationwide and working with some renowned architects such as Olsen Kundig. And we also have a giveaway. So DLH GMC. Really enjoy listening. Been a lead carpenter job site superintendent for 20 plus years. Crazy how much I can relate to. Really enjoy. Keep it up on Instagram at DLH and GMC. So I'm going to share that on our story. If you guys want a chance at winning some swag, make sure you drop us a review on iTunes. And if you guys want to buy some swag and support us, head over to our Instagram. There's a link in our bio. You can buy the swag over there. And a big thanks to our partners, Duration Molding and Millwork, Rockwool, Reno Run, and Upstate Merch.